Welcome back to The Road Chose Me. My name's Dan, and on today's episode, we'll continue the build of the Dream Overland camper with wheels, tyres, and suspension. I know from experience the choices I make here will have a huge impact on how usable this vehicle is in the real world. There's lots to do on this episode, let's get stuck straight into it. I've learned over the years that I don't necessarily want a suspension upgrade purely to get more height and more ground clearance, but I do want one to be able to carry more weight. There's no doubt this vehicle's going to weigh right on its max legal limit, and it'll be that weight all the time. With batteries and water and food and a fridge and all the rest, this will be a heavy Jeep, and I need to think of a suspension setup that will be able to carry that weight and carry it for tens of thousands of miles on severely rough terrain. So I'm not going for a 4-inch monster lift so I can cram 37-inch tyres under here, but I am interested in quality components that will make sure it drives really nice on the road and has a little bit more performance off-road, a bit more ground clearance, and the ability to carry all of that weight. They're both really nice things to have. So right now you're watching me remove the old suspension, and you will notice it is a Mopar 2-inch lift. I guess the previous owner installed that. I have no idea how long it's been on, and I'd rather go with something higher quality. So I've taken off the shocks, the sway bar end links, loosened the track bar, and now there's kind of nothing holding the rear springs in, so with just a little bit of force I can push down on the axle and the springs come right out. I really haven't worked much with air tools in the past, and I've got to say they definitely make jobs like this so much easier and faster. Look at me messing around here with a hand ratchet. That was a waste of time. I don't think anyone will be surprised to learn that I'm running AEV suspension again on this Jeep. This is their 2.5-inch DualSport XP, which is really similar to what I ran on the Gladiator all the way around Australia and the Jeep that I drove all the way around Africa. Both of those suspension setups were absolutely flawless, and in fact, I still drive the Africa Jeep, still the same suspension that went all the way around. That to me proves how high quality it is, and a testament to what is needed to undergo these kinds of expeditions on what are probably the worst roads in the world. I'm following AEV's detailed instructions. Starting at the rear, I've relocated the track bar to handle the changes in geometry, and now I'm installing their standard load springs. They do offer high capacity springs for heavier vehicles, which I may upgrade to in the future. My plan for now is get it on the road, get it driving to shows, and then later, when it's completely finished on the interior, including with water and batteries and a full diesel tank, I'll throw it on a scale, I'll have a really accurate weight of the completed vehicle, and if I need to, I could upgrade to AEV's high capacity springs. Part of this build for me is doing things that I've never done before so I can learn the pros and cons. Along that vein, I've opted for AEV's XP Suspension, which comes with these 8100 big bore shocks from Bilstein. These are remote reservoir, these things are incredible. I'm excited to put them on and learn the pros and cons. Are they significantly better than the monotubes I've run in the past? There's really only one way to find out, so let's go for it. These shocks are designed to work with AEV's corner guards and splash guards, and Michael spent quite a bit of time double checking that they wouldn't get in the way of the camper either. Thankfully, everything fits perfectly fine. With the new shocks and springs installed, I don't need to push the axle down anymore, so I can install the sway bar end links again, torque them to spec, and I'm pretty much done on the rear suspension. I'll come around later with a yellow paint pen and put a stripe on all of these bolts, so I can easily check if they loosen up later. With the big shocks installed, we can check the AEV splash guards for clearance, and we just have to trim them a tiny bit to fit around these monster 8100s. It's all starting to come together now, the rear is looking fantastic. The wheels I've decided to run don't have center caps, and so we'll be able to see the spindle nut on the end of the axle. I decided this time that I'm just going to clean it up and paint it and see how that looks, rather than running wheel caps like I did on the Gladiator in Australia. So after a good clean, some alcohol, and some prep, we made up this little cardboard template and we went around and we painted the end of all the axle nuts. As I said, I'm doing things differently on this build so I can learn the pros and cons, but some things stay the same. I've always loved using steel wheels because you can bash them back into shape if you have a problem, or you can find someone on the side of the road with a stick welder no matter what country you're in. They've never let me down on all my expeditions, so I see no reason to change now. I've never really liked true 35s because they're 12.5 inches wide. That means they stick out past the guards, it means they're heavy, it means the Jeep will throw mud on itself and all of that. So what I've decided to do here is these are actually 18-inch wheels and tyres, and these are 285/75 18s. That means they measure a true 35 inches tall with a tape measure, but they're actually only 11 inches wide. So they really are tall and skinny. And being 18-inch, they will be less available around the world. If I was going back to the Congo, no, I wouldn't run these wheels and tyres. But for where I plan to go right now, I think they're an interesting option and I'm going to learn the pros and cons. I'm going to see if I like them, then I'll decide if I actually keep them for when I put this in a shipping container to go to a new part of the world, or if I change back to 17-inch rims. And I should add too, these are Yokohama Geolandar X-ATs. I've been running these tyres now for nearly 100,000 miles on my various vehicles. I've never even had a single flat tyre. So yes, these things are incredibly tough, long-lasting and durable, and they've taken me everywhere that I want to go around the world. They're pretty quiet on-road and provide plenty of grip off-road. In my mind, these are the perfect tyre for an Overlander. Now I'm onto the front suspension, and I thought I'd start with something easy, the steering stabilizer. AEV and Bilstein offer this easy bolt-in upgrade, and it makes a big difference to the steering feel. Overall, the process on the front suspension is really similar to the rear. I loosen but don't remove all of the control arm bolts, and then do the same thing to the track bar. Once it's loose like this, I'll just have a little bit of movement so I can get things out of the way. Then I can take off the sway bar end links, the shocks top and bottom, and finally now, the axle will droop enough that I can pull out the old springs. After that, it's just a matter of reassembly, basically in the opposite order. With Michael's help, we managed to push the front axle down enough to get the springs in. The rear Bilstein 8100s were a thing of beauty, and the front might even be better. With the remote reservoir, they look pretty serious. AEV provide all of the nuts, bolts and brackets you need to make these shocks work perfectly, including mounting the remote reservoir up behind the front bumper. They do advise installing their bumper first, but it works fine on the stock bumper as well. With the new shocks and springs installed, I can put the sway bar end links back on and then tighten everything to spec. We paint the front hubs as well, and then we can roll in the wheels and tyres on the front. I'm really happy with how this has come together, and I'm excited to see how it handles, especially when it's fully loaded. I think this combination of wheels, tyres and suspension looks fantastic, and so far it rides great as well. Of course, the real test will be when it's fully loaded. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts. What do you think about the new suspension and my choice of 18-inch wheels? I know it's a little bit controversial, but I'm also interested to see if 35s make a significant difference over the 33s that I normally run. So as always, I have to say a huge thanks to my supporters on Patreon. None of this would be possible without them. And if you'd like to get behind the scenes or early access, jump on over to Patreon now. There's a link in the description and you can check out all of that. Of course, thank you guys all for watching. And as always, let me know if you've got any questions, any comments, or anything you'd like me to focus on. I have a few more videos here of the build to go, and then we'll be caught up to real time, and it's time to get going on the interior and a whole lot more. So as always, have fun out there, and maybe I'll bump into you on the road. Next time on the build, we securely attach a few max tracks and cut some big holes in the side of the camper. This is trash removal of all the different packaging for the shocks.